The game was rigged before you were born. But look, in this explainer, we're not going to dive into politics or wild conspiracy theories. Instead, we're focusing on the literal, mechanical rules of wealth that govern your paycheck every single day. Think of it like a 5,000-year-old financial thriller. We're going to peel back the layers on how the wealthiest individuals in history have systematically designed the economic environment to favor capital over labor. And we're going to kick things off by looking at exactly how the modern version of this system was literally drafted.
Picture this. It's the dead of night in the year 1910. A private railroad car is slipping out of New York, carrying passengers who have been given strict instructions to use only their first names. They were even told to arrive at the station separately, under the cover of darkness, so absolutely no one would see them traveling together.
So you've got to ask yourself, what actually happens when the wealthiest men in America meet in absolute secret? Well, that train is heading down to Jekyll Island, Georgia. Now, back then, this was a highly exclusive private hunting club owned by some of the most powerful families in the country. We're talking the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Astors, the Vanderbilts. We're going there to see exactly how systemic wealth extraction is designed completely away from the public eye.
And we are talking about real, historical heavyweights here. Guys like Nelson Aldrich, the Senate Republican leader, Frank Vanderlip of National City Bank, Henry Davinson, a senior partner at Morgan, and Benjamin Strong. They literally locked themselves away for 10 days to draft what would eventually become the 1913 Federal Reserve Act. That one single piece of legislation fundamentally changed how every single dollar in America is created, distributed, and taxed. This isn't some fringe conspiracy theory, you guys. It is a meticulously documented historical event. Section 1. The Ancient Playbook. 5,000 years of wealth extraction. Because, you see, what happened to Jekyll Island isn't a new phenomenon. It's really just one modern chapter in an engineering playbook that you can trace back to the very invention of money itself. Let's look at 3 specific historical case studies to see exactly how this playbook operates.
Consider ancient Sumeria around 3000 BCE. Temples back then were issuing grain loans with 20 to 33% interest. Sound familiar? It perfectly mirrors your modern 24% credit card APR or those massive payday loan rates. Back then, if farmers couldn't repay those exorbitant rates, they lost their land to the creditors. It just goes to show that debt has always been a brilliantly engineered mechanism to transfer your labor and your assets to a creditor. They figured out super early on that you can extract wealth simply by owning the mechanism of credit.
Fast forward to the Roman Republic, and we get the invention of the legal loophole. Patricians were legally banned from engaging in common commerce. So what did they do? They transferred their wealth to freedmen. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't just a simple transfer. They essentially used these ex-slaves as legal fronts to conduct trade on their behalf and then pocketed the profits as untaxed gifts. The offshore accounts and shell companies that hide an estimated $12 to $32 trillion today, they aren't a modern invention at all. They're a direct copy of this Roman technique. The offshore system your CPA might refuse to explain to you was literally invented by Rome.
Then there's the enclosure weapon. Think about the 1235 Statute of Merton in medieval England, which allowed the nobility to legally fence off and enclose common shared farmland. Compare that to modern zoning laws preventing affordable housing construction today. The systemic weapon is always exactly the same. It's all about using the law to convert shared resources into private, enclosed property. Every era just finds a different resource to enclose, whether it's medieval farmland, modern intellectual property, or urban housing. But the mechanical, legal mechanism, it never changes.
Section 2. The modern architecture. So let's look at how this ancient playbook builds the entirely nonpartisan rules that are directly impacting your bank account today. And make no mistake, these aren't rules that just accidentally happen to favor the wealthy. They're rules intentionally written and lobbied for by the people who own capital. Here is the absolutely crucial takeaway. Our modern tax code treats wage earners and capital owners fundamentally differently. If you're out there hustling for a paycheck, your wage income can be taxed at up to 37%. But if you make your money purely through investment gains, meaning your capital is out there doing the hard work for you, that income is taxed at a maximum of just 20%. The system is literally designed to treat these two types of income radically differently.
Which brings us to a frankly staggering number, $110 billion. That is the estimated annual cost of a specific tax provision known as the step-up in basis. Here's how it works. When you inherit wealth, the tax basis of those assets completely resets to their current market value. So if a multi-million-dollar portfolio is passed down, all the capital gains taxes that would have been owed during the original owner's lifetime are just completely wiped out. It's essentially a legal magic trick for tax-free intergenerational wealth transfer.
Oh, and we definitely can't forget the infamous carried interest loophole. This little provision allows private equity and hedge fund managers to classify their primary income as capital gains instead of regular wages. Thanks to about $700 million a year poured into financial lobbying, this loophole somehow survives every single major tax reform attempt. It ensures that managers overseeing $100 million funds effectively pay a lower tax rate than their own administrative assistants. Like I said, it's a feature, not a bug. And then you've got the Federal Reserve mechanism. When the Fed uses quantitative easing to create money, it primarily purchases financial assets, which naturally inflates the stock market. Now, who does that actually benefit? Well, it disproportionately enriches the top 10% of Americans because they happen to own an astonishing 87% of all stocks. When asset prices go up across the board, the owners of capital are the ones who win big. Think about the timeline from 2008 to 2023. The Fed's balance sheet absolutely exploded from $900 billion to nearly $8.9 trillion. To put that in perspective, while the S&P 500 rose by a massive 600% during that time, the median household income sluggishly crept up just 35%. Asset inflation vastly outpaces wage growth, entirely by design.
Section 3. 4 legal escape hatches. It's time to learn how to actually use the rules. Before you start feeling completely demoralized by all this, let's pivot to the actionable financial literacy you need. We're going to outline 4 legal strategies the wealthy use that you can realistically apply to your own paycheck.
Quick aside before we jump in, this is purely educational. Definitely not financial or tax advice, so please chat with a qualified pro before making any major money moves. Okay, escape hatch number 1, maximizing tax-advantaged accounts. The system provides really powerful tools like the 401k, the Roth IRA, and the HSA. The wealthy max these out aggressively, using backdoor methods and solo accounts to shelter over $70,000 a year from current taxation. If you have earned income, you absolutely need to be participating in the sheltered ecosystem too, even if it's just in smaller amounts.
Why is this so crucial? Well, let's look at the math on compound interest. Even if you only contribute $6,500 a year to a Roth IRA for 30 years at an average 8% return, you legally build over $732,000 that you can eventually withdraw completely tax-free. It's a legally protected wealth-building mechanism available to almost anyone with an average income. Yet so many of us miss out because this stuff simply isn't taught in schools.
Escape hatch number 2 is a fundamental mindset shift. Capital over wages. The wealthy don't just earn money, they own things that earn money for them. You can execute this ownership shift by investing in low-cost index funds. And since modern brokerages allow you to buy fractional shares, the barrier to entry to start converting your heavily taxed wages into lower-taxed capital ownership is literally just $1. There's no excuse not to start.
Hatch 3 is a mechanical 3-step playbook known as the borrow, never sell strategy. The ultra-rich practically never sell their appreciating assets. Instead, they hold onto them and take out loans against them at really low 3 to 5% interest rates. Because loan proceeds aren't considered taxable income, they can live completely tax-free, let their assets compound, and eventually pass away, which triggers that step-up in basis we talked about earlier. Now, while you do need some scale to replicate this fully, just understanding that the wealthy prioritize asset accumulation and view debt as a strategic tool, that completely changes how you should look at your own balance sheet.
Finally, escape hatch 4 involves charitable trust structures. Using a donor-advised fund, which is incredibly accessible now, with some providers starting at just $5,000, allows you to donate appreciated stock instead of cash. By doing this, you completely avoid capital gains taxes on that stock's growth while instantly securing a tax deduction for its full market value. It's brilliant. This isn't cheating the system, it's using the system exactly as it was designed to be used.
Section 4. Playing the rigged game. What is your next move? We've peeled back the layers of this 5,000-year-old financial thriller, moving from ancient Mesopotamia all the way to modern tax loopholes. And what you should take away from all this is not a sense of defeat, but a real understanding of how to finally use this exact same architecture to your advantage.
The men who wrote these rules weren't evil. They were rational, and they were counting on you never reading them. You see, the elites in that 1910 railroad car heading to Jekyll Island, they weren't cartoon villains. They were simply doing what powerful, well-resourced groups have always done throughout history, writing the rules to protect their own interests. But keeping you in the dark, keeping the average worker uneducated about how capital actually functions, that was always their greatest weapon.
So the question isn't whether the game is rigged. I mean, come on, it obviously is. The rulebook for this rigged system has always been public, but it's deliberately complex, so you'll just get frustrated and look the other way. Well, since we just essentially read the rulebook together today, the only question left to ask yourself is, what is your